I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Hello, everybody, and
Welcome.
welcome back to our biased reactions to Secrets of Magic.
That's right.
We're going to be picking up where we left off last time by starting the Magic Items chapter.
All right. Well, we can see this chapter opener, and we have like a.
What is that?
I think it's Lamencioni that just kind of.
No, what are they fighting? I know them.
I don't know.
I recognize that creature, but I can't remember what it's called. It's like some kind of Lovecraftian thing, isn't it?
It might be.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
Feels like it's either Lovecraftian or Thessalonian.
Everything in that art style always looks a little bit like a zombie to me. So, but I know that's not supposed to be a zombie. So you never know. But they're definitely fighting. They definitely are not zombies, and they definitely are not fighting a zombie. So magic items, creating a magic item and investing a magic item. There's just a little bit that is thinking about those items, so that it's not just perfunctory when you create a magic item. Like, what is it made out of?
Oh, marsh giant. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that is a marsh giant.
It does look like a marsh giant. That's a great point. I was like, it looks like some kind of giant, but it's not super large. But yeah, that looks like a marsh giant now that you say it.
Yep.
So, investing a magic item talks about the idea that it's not just like a game-ish thing where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna spend this much time and invest the item. Like, how do you invest the item? It depends on the person. You might like sit silently with your diadem of intellect and just be like, the magic is coursing through me, which is kind of the more just like nothing's going on. But you might also pull it out and wipe it off and check the gems and.
Some might never take them off.
That's right.
Yep.
And then activating a magic item is like, think about exactly what happens when you activate the item. Like, does your third eye gemstone sink into your brow and become a tattoo? Do you feel icy cool breath when you do a potion of dragon's breath?
So it's not burning you in the mouth?
Yes. Yeah. It's like, minty. And then there's also a note about...
Who needs mouthwash when you have... Fire breath.
Collected notes from Lambus of Magnimar, who has a collection of items, because there's a lot of just like funny and random notes that are throughout this section. So then there is a treasure by level table. It has not only treasure, but the treasure is by level.
Yeah, this stuff is pretty useful because it lets you figure out where these are always useful to figure out like what page things are on and like take a look at when you need to drop treasure in your game and you know what level you need it to be.
And you know that if you need a 19th level item, then you are out of luck.
But Mark, it fits it evenly on a spread. There are sacrifices that must be made.
So let's move on to Fulu's.
Yes.
Paper charms that originate from Tiansha. So there are a lot of other regional variants with different names than Fulu, but Fulu is the name that we're using here. They're little paper charms. You could put them onto armor, shield, weapons, creatures, or structures. The ones that are put onto armor, shield, and weapons, similarly to talismans, which are put onto those things, are also talismans. The ones that are put onto some weird other thing that is not those are not talismans. They're just Fulu. So a Fulu might also have the talisman trait, and it might not.
So a Fulu on an armor, shield, or weapon is going to be a talisman, but like Fulus are kind of like a broader category then?
Yes. They're a category of paper charms that you attach to things. When they're on an armor, shield, or weapon, they're a talisman that you can probably activate as a free action or one action or just like any other talisman and consume them that way. If you slap them onto something else, they generally have their effects immediately instead.
Gotcha.
So it's like, I put this Fulu onto this undead to mess around with it, and then it immediately messes around with it. Whereas when you put a Fulu onto your armor, you're just setting it there as a talisman, and you're setting it up, and then you're going to activate it later. So, yeah, basically, the activation of the Fulu again, depends on if it's a talisman or not, because you either activate it now if it's not a talisman, or you activate it later if it is a talisman.
Oh, this is interesting for crafting, that you can craft them really quickly.
Yes. You can craft them quickly, but they don't last as long if you do.
But I guess a lot of times when you're like, oh, crud, I need to craft this quickly, it's because you need it.
Yes. Yes, that's right. So you could do it in a single day of downtime rather than 4 days, and make 4 Fulus, but they last for only a month, but you'll probably use them within that time. So that can be very handy. And then there's a bunch of Fulus. So yeah, the Fulus were created by a freelancer who goes by Sen HHS in credits for books. And she is from Taiwan and is pretty familiar with some of the uses of Fulu over there, and what some of the typical ideas of what kind of Fulu you would have, and so converted some of those from a kind of folklorish real world usage into what would the game terms of it be, like the Fulu of fire suppression.
Here's one to ward off creatures of an opposing alignment, so like ward off evil. That enters the area.
Or detect something that's bad because it just kind of bursts out into flame. When you do something anathema to your own deity. Or concealment, where you put them in each cardinal direction to kind of conceal and make yourself invisible in an invisibility sphere against a particular type of creature. Drunken Monkey Fulu, which is a talisman that can protect you against poisons, especially if it's alcohol. Then there's the Fulu of fire suppression, which is like you put it in your kitchen to try to ensure that you will have good luck against fire, and it in fact slows the spread of fire. Tries to counteract fire with a shower of water if it itself catches fire. Then the Fulu of flood suppression, where you build the Fulu usually in the lowest area of a building, especially when you're getting close to a big stormy, like, kind of monsoon season. And it slows the spread of flooding water in the area by half, repelling the remaining water away. If it becomes submersed, as the ink dissolves in the water, it releases a rush of heat, harmlessly vaporizing non-magical water into steam and trying to counteract magic water.
Very cool. So, there's more. Fulu of the Stoic Ox.
Yep. That protects you against disease, like the Drunken Monkey does against poison. And Ghostbane Fulu gives you a ghost touch onto your weapon. Magical Lock Fulu is a Fulu that you affix over a seam or frame of a door, window, or container to lock it. So you're just like, whoop, and then you wind up locking it, and the more Fulu you just like stick onto the door, the better the lock is. You can put up to 9. The Matchmaker Fulu has blessings for one's relationship from Shalyn, the goddess of beauty and love. It's red, like red string kind of thing. And you get a bonus on a diplomacy check to make an impression, and you won't critically fail.
There's a sidebar on this page about Fulus in real life, which is pretty cool.
Yep. In 2 different instruments in Taoist traditions, Fu refer to warding talismans, and Lu are the writs for summoning divine soldiers and spirits. That's right. So Rebound Fulu is something that when you activate it on your shield, it reflects your foe's violence back against them. They take some damage too when you do your shield block. Restful Sleep Fulu depicts the 5-spoke wheel of Kijong, god of magic and medicine. And that is going to give you more recovery when you rest, and a bonus on saves against mental effects during in your dreams, like nightmare.
Here's the undead one. Spirit Sealing Fulu.
It's very, very classic.
Freezing an undead in its tracks.
You just, like, slap it onto an undead's forehead, and they're just like, ugh. That's right.
Stormbreaker Fulu gets you a huge amount of resistance to cold, electricity, and sonic damage until the end of your next turn. It lets you basically ignore weather.
Mm-hmm. Then there's a tracking Fulu, which you affix to a target, and then you activate its pair. And once activated, the unaffixed Fulu flutters toward the affixed one. And that way you can move for up to an hour and follow it to get to the affixed Fulu.
Venomous Cure Fulu helps you fight against poisons.
Yep, but it goes against injected poison instead of ingested poison for the drunken monkey.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some Fulu-based items that are not exactly Fulu.
Oh, there's also a sidebar for creating. How do you create your own Fulu?
Yep.
Just general ideas for, like, balancing them and such.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying Fulu items?
Yes. So there's Fu Water, which are the burnt ashes of Fulu in water that blend it a red color and give it purifying effects like holy water, but it can also counteract ailments. And then Fulu Compendium, which contains various symbols from Fulu, and it gives you a bonus on skill checks to determine a Fulu's function. You can rip a page out of the compendium and cast it in an arc to turn it into spirit sealing Fulus, just like a storm of them that try to, like, onto all the undead in the area. So that is Fulus.
And then there are grimoires.
Mm-hmm. So, grimoires are really cool. They are a special kind of magic book, spell book, that when you use it during daily preparations, you get a special power. So that's pretty cool, especially since they're not in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
They're not invested. They're just flat out a free bonus effect that you get. And so you pretty much, maybe not at exactly the level the item becomes available, but eventually when you look at the price tag and say, this is nothing, you want to have a grimoire.
Yes.
Just because, why not? There's no opportunity cost once the price becomes not an opportunity cost. They are, obviously, for like a wizard or someone who actually puts their spells in spellbooks, that they also can hold some spells for you. If you're not someone who normally puts your spells in spellbooks, you can still study it anyway, and it's just so you can get the activate ability. But they only apply to spells cast via spell slots, not cantrips, focus spells, or innate spells. And you can't use multiple grimoires or share the grimoire with somebody else. So, I think we all would have loved to have even more grimoires than this, but because there was a cycle of grimoires, one for each school of magic, because wizards are greedy class that wants to have everything, and they are the ones who use spellbooks primarily, that used up like every possible space except for the Endless Grimoire. So there's 9 grimoires in here, if I recall correctly, the Endless Grimoire, and then one for each school. So, Transmutation, the Bestiary of Metamorphosis, once per day, will switch which form you're in a polymorph. Book of Lingering Blaze, the evocation one, once each day, is when you do a fire evocation, you superheat the flames and get through a bunch of fire resistance. Codex of Unimpeded Sight, the divination one, once each day, free action after a divination spell to seek or recall knowledge. And a greater version that gives you a bonus and lets you do it once per hour.
I see why the Endless Grimoire is called the Endless Grimoire. It has unlimited pages.
Yes, plus gives you a bonus to learning spells, and eventually, and it also gives you additional spell slot during daily preparation that goes up in level as the book goes up in level. Instructions for Lasting Agony is in the Necromancy book. And when you do a harmful necromancy spell, you twist and warp your target with negative energy. If they fail their saving throw against the spell, they are also sickened 1.
Mm-hmm.
which, like, when you throw Sickened 1 on top of some of the other stuff your Necromancy spell is doing, it's pretty good, because it's a -1 to everything for them until they spend actions to get rid of it. So, it's particularly nasty if your Necromancy spell was already going to mess with their actions or do some other kind of debilitation to them that wasn't a status penalty.
And I see too that, like, looking at these, like, the highest level one here is 10 too. So is that in part because, like, you had to do every single school and you had to make sure there was something that was approachable?
There's an 18th level True Endless Grimoire, but I feel like we could have used some that were even lower level than this, so that you felt like you could get them very early on, but also that we could have used some that were maybe a few, but a lot of them were pretty low level, so we definitely could have used a bunch that are much higher level so that they seem even more, like, impressive, because these cheap low level ones that like that only costs 200 gold pieces to get that instructions for Lasting Agony. So, like, by the time you're level, like, 8 or 9, and everything you're getting is costing so much more than that. It's like, why would I not want to?
Yeah. So there's a lot of
to make
potential
someone Sickened once per day.
Expand on grimoires in future.
Yeah, I think there need to be higher level grimoires so that people can be like, whoa, that grimoire is ridiculous. Because when the highest level one for your school is 5, then it's not that ridiculous. It's actually very approachable. But if we put in a set that were all level 15 to 18, let's say 10 levels higher, then that would be like, oh, well, we can't even use grimoires for, like, 75% of the game.
Yes.
The Spellbook of Redundant Enchantment is a really good one, where when your enchantment spell doesn't work, you can redirect the enchantment energy into yourself to retain that spell that didn't work in place of another. So you're like, oh, well, I'd rather keep that spell and use it next time.
Storyteller's Opus, hee hee.
Yep.
Creature succeeds but does not critically succeed at a perception check to disbelieve an illusion spell you prepare from this grimoire once per day. Reaction to quickly tell a fib to attempt a deception check to smooth over the inconsistencies in the illusion.
Yep. Where you're like, wait, no, that's really a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty handy. The Summoning Hand Scroll is for conjuration. When you do a conjuration spell that summons one or more creatures, you can infuse one of the summoned creatures with spell energies, and it gains 10 temporary hit points that last up to 1 minute when it arrives. And last is Warding Tablets. It's the Abjuration one, of course. When you cast a beneficial spell on yourself or a single ally, you use the tablet's power to infuse the warding with additional abjurations. Attempt to remove a harmful effect. So
very nice.
it is one action. Most of the others are free action. But who's going to say no to a one action, basically a quicken dispel magic when you cast an abjuration on someone? That's really good.
Yeah.
Because you can do a 1-2 punch of like, oh, well, okay, there was a bad thing, and now I have not only put up my abjuration, but I've also removed that thing. Like, let's say that you're fighting an enemy that's like a fire monster that also put some horrible debuff on the party, and you're like, well, I'll remove the debuff and cast on myself and cast resist energy fire.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So that is the grimoires. And then we have magical tattoos.
Yes.
So there's a big sidebar on this spread that talks about the significance of tattoos in various cultures throughout Golarion. And also suggests some feats that are already in Lost Omen's character guide for folks who want to play a tattoo-based character.
That's right.
So there's the basic feat tattoo artist for to let you craft magical tattoos.
Yes. So with the tattoo artist, you can craft magical tattoos. Now there aren't enough that are second level or lower, so we're gonna have to make more of those. The tattoo trait is basically it's an invested item, but it's on you, so it can't be stolen. It's always invested. You can't put it on or off. It's a tattoo. I mean, it's very difficult. You can eventually remove it by destroying it. So there's some cool tattoos in here. There's the familiar tattoo, which basically has an image of like a little animal, and you can basically allow your familiar to meld into it, and
Ah.
at that point, the familiar spends a single action and goes into the tattoo or exits the tattoo. It can help protect your familiar from fireballs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the Rune of Sin, which is an uncommon Thessalonian rune that is based on the 7 Thessalonian schools of magic. And when you cast a spell that matches your sin, you gain a resistance to damage from spells until the start of your next turn.
And the resistance is greater against spells of the matching school.
That's right. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
I imagine certainly that that Wrath evocation is going to be one of the more popular ones, or the ones that you're going to see a lot of damaging quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Then there's Warding Tattoo, which is a reaction once per day. An enemy, hazard, or the environment makes an attack against your AC, requires you to attempt a saving throw, causes you to take damage automatically. And until the end of the current turn, against the triggering effect, you get a +1 stat as opposed to AC and saves, and gain resistance to the damage, and then that can scale up
as you get to higher levels. And
but it's not just greater and true and whatever versions of it. They vary the other kinds of
I see. So you can activate.
You can have one that's better against environment.
One that's better against environments, one that's better against, like, places where you can't breathe, and one that helps against fiends. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
And I see here that tattoos can be upgraded like a lot of other items by having the tattoo artist add to your existing tattoo.
Yep. So next is personal staves. It's rules that let you kind of customize your staff a little bit with the personal staves rule. You find a theme based on a trait and then put in some spells into that theme. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you can craft the staff. So that's basically what it is. And then there's a long rules that say that. And then
how do you determine? Yeah, how do you come up with like the level and the price and what kind of spells?
An example of Linny's leaf stick, which Linny, the iconic druid, decided to make.
Yes. As well as how to upgrade and change the staff, because as you get higher level, you're probably going to want to have this staff be able to do more powerful stuff too.
That's right.
So you don't outlevel your trusty staff. Very cool.
Yep.
So next up is spell catalysts.
That's right. So spell catalysts are a consumable item, and they are basically a special material component that you can use for a very particular spell in order to do something just super, sometimes different or cool or more powerful with that spell. And they typically either are a free part of casting the spell or they add another action to casting the spell if they're doing something particularly ridiculous. So these items were created by freelancer Isis Wozniakowska, and there's a bunch of them. So Dazzling Rosary works for spiritual weapon, and it's going to make your spiritual weapon potentially dazzle the target. Then there's Dimensional Knot, which will
add it to a dimension door spell to bring someone along with you.
Yep, you can bring a single creature along with you, but they become stunned.
I mean, that would be pretty disorienting to be like, I'm gonna teleport you now.
Whoa, I'm stunned.
Fire starter pellets, which you can add to. You okay there, Hank?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Which you can add to fireball spells to cause them to do persistent damage.
Persistent fire damage. As the flames cling to them. Force tiles. There's a picture of one here. That light kind of refracts around them, and it changes a wall of force to have a increased maximum length and height. And also, creatures that try to move into the wall space or shoved into the wall take force damage from the wall of force.
I mean, like all of these new categories that are introduced really strike me as categories that are very easy to expand. I mean, this is like item that is added to specific spell to augment it, or like very broad categories. So these are while none of these has like a ton of items for its given concept, these feel more like they're almost like here is an invitation to people to create new types of items that you may not have thought of for the game before.
Absolutely. So then there's Healer's Gel. So Healer's Gel makes it so that not only do you heal, but you also grant temporary hit points. And you can get better Healer's Gels to get even more temporary hit points. And, like, at the point that you're high level, why would you not just give 5 temporary hit points every time you, right? It's like, 25 gold pieces, whatever. I spend more than that on an arrow.
Yeah, for sure.
So why not give 5 temporary hit points every time you heal? You never know when that's going to count.
Noxious Incense, add to Wall of Fire to make it to fill the adjacent squares with a foul, thick smoke that conceals creatures. It also smells bad.
It does smell bad. I mean, that's important, isn't it? Shimmering Dust is a luminous mica dust that makes it so that when a creature fails to save against your glitter dust, the glowing grains stick to them and cause them to shed dim light for as long as their invisibility is negated, and take a penalty to stealth as well.
Soothing Sense. This is one that adds an action because it's pretty potent. But causes your soothe spell to not just soothe wounds, but also soothe fear to reduce the value of the target's frightened condition. Very useful.
And it costs very little, so it's like, oh, I need to heal someone with soothe, and they are also frightened. I might as well spend 10 gold pieces and reduce it.
Yeah, and that's why it needs to certainly why it needs to add an action.
Yep. Now you do have to spend an action. Yeah. So if you're a bard, that's going to be in place of your Inspire Courage, and you now have to think about it. You still might, because it depends on how bad the situation is with the frightened, especially if someone is fleeing until they're no longer frightened, and you want to get rid of that.
For sure.
So Thunderbird Tuft, that is one that applies to Shocking Grasp, and it's going to make it so it funnels electricity back into you in a defensive nimbus. It does add an action because it gives you a minute of creatures that touch or hit you with melee armed attack or non-reach weapons taking electricity damage, or more if they use a metal weapon. It does only last for a round with the first level version because it's a first level version. But by the time you get to the 9th level version, if they use a metal weapon, they're taking as much damage as the 4th level spell Fire Shield.
So in a way, some of these
and it lasts for the same time as Fire Shield. Except it's only you're getting it out of the catalyst alone.
So in a way, some of these are like a different way to go about the idea of spells that scale, a variable action cost spells, except for the fact that they have an item with a cost in them makes them even more powerful than like a variable action cost spell could naturally be.
So Kitsune Warlock asks, does Healer's Gel work in hair?
I mean, it doesn't say that you can't put it in your hair.
That's true. So, waterproofing wax is...
Although usage is held in one hand, so I guess you'd be like...
Waterproofing wax is for the grease spell, and it makes it so that the grease spell gains liquid repellent properties. So you cast it, and the Conjure Grease fills 3 5-foot squares within 30 feet instead of its normal area. So it's fewer squares, but you can kind of make them not contiguous, which can be funny. Speaking of new kinds of items...
Spell Hearts.
Spell Hearts. They're like permanent talismans that you attach to things in order to get a variable ability depending on whether you attach them to armor or weapon.
Yeah, and they also, like, you have either a talisman or a spell heart attached to things. They really are like talismans except permanent.
They're almost kind of like materia in some way, and all those other kinds of, like, little trinkets you attach into weapons and armors in different games where you get certain benefits depending on which one you apply. So they're pretty cool. And they start with the 5-feather wreath, which is the air version. They each have like a theme, like air in this case. For armor, it can give you an acrobatics check and resistance to falling damage, and for a weapon, you can kind of, when you cast air spells, you can fly a little bit, just a little bit. And it starts out with giving you the Gale Blast cantrip, and then it can give you more stuff at higher levels that are air effects, like Wall of Wind and Airwalk.
I see Flaming Star on this page as well,
Yes.
with the fire theme,
Yep.
resistance to fire. Activate it on arm if it's on armor, weapons. Cause your strikes to do additional fire damage.
Mm-hmm. And then it gives you Produce Flame, and then eventually more fire spells like Fireball, Wall of Fire. The Grim Sandglass is a necromantic one. It can give you negative resistance. It can give you more necromantic damage, like the fire one. It starts with Chill Touch and gives you more necromancy spells too.
Mm-hmm. Perfect Droplet, I see, is the water themed one.
That's right.
Resistance to water. For the weapon though, cause your body to become mist-like, so you can move through enemy spaces.
Mm-hmm. And then you gain the Spout spell, and then more water spells as you level up. As the item levels up.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Trinity Geode. That's the earth one. So the armor can give you resistance to physical damage, and the weapon can deal additional bludgeoning damage, and then it gives you Scatter, Scree, Cantrip, and then more earth spells as you level up. And those are the spell arts.
Yeah.
This section has consumables of all types, including some of my favorite unsung and undervalued consumables, talismans.
Yes.
Talismans are so good especially when you're much higher level than the talisman, and you can just be like, oh, this costs how much? 25 gold pieces? That's like nothing. I can just pay that anytime. Especially since a lot of them are free actions, and so you could just do it when you need to do it.
We had some talismans earlier in the Fulu sections, but these are more of your like classic talismans. So starting off with the Binding Coil, which you wrap around a weapon to, well, as you might expect, try to grapple the creature that you hit.
Yep. Basically, instead of a normal grapple, it just sort of ties them up, and then they've got to escape the coil.
And
that way you can leave and go do something else.
And there's a greater version that's vastly harder to escape.
That's right. Then there's Dispersing Bullet. A Dispersing Bullet scatters into metal shards. It's a sling bullet, and it'll just go boom. And do a 10-foot emanation around the target, and it'll push them away. So that's pretty cool. It's a nice way to break an enemy's formation. So Dragonbone Arrowhead.
Oh, this one's cool. You attach it to a melee weapon or range weapon with the thrown trait, and it lets you, when you throw the thing, it'll just pop back to your hand.
Yep. Also, it gains the thrown 20 feet weapon trait.
Oh, so this can be applied. This isn't just applied to a melee weapon, or it's not a melee or ranged weapon with the thrown trait. It's a melee weapon or a ranged weapon with a thrown trait.
Correct.
Aha!
So
sentence parsing ambiguities.
The fixed weapon gives the thrown 20 feet weapon trait. If your hands are full when the weapon returns, then it falls to the ground in your space.
You kind of have to work hard to have your hands be full by the time that the weapon returns.
I think the main thing is if it's a thrown 10, it goes up to a thrown 20.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
That's what the thing is. So it's pretty nice. And it flies right back to you. So Eye of Enlightenment is a fun one. So basically, you are going to do a strike with your weapon, and then it suddenly gleans information about the target and gives you a recall knowledge. And it won't be wrong, because you used like the essence of them from attacking them to figure it out.
Oh, I see. So if you roll a critical failure, you get a failure instead. So you'll never learn false information.
Unless you're dubious.
Unless you're dubious.
Ghostly Portal Paint.
Then you chose to have dubious knowledge at that point.
Yep. Ghostly Portal Paint is a fun one. It makes a section of wall ghostly and incorporeal, which allows corporeal objects to pass through. So you're just like, I'm going to draw this onto the wall. And incorporeal things actually can't cross through the wall. But corporeal things can. So it's like kind of the reverse.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
So you can do your whole making a doorway out of nothing, and also you can mess up incorporeal creatures that are trying to attack you.
Yep. Golden Chrysalis is a sling bullet that like becomes a magical butterfly in a 30-foot line that scatters dust in the air. And it helps you deal with like invisibility and concealment.
Lion Claw, is this like a lion blade thing, or is it more like...
It's an actual lion claw. It's a
Oh,
pretty
I
powerful
see.
talisman.
Oh, I see. It lets you do a pounce. Stride,
Yes.
then strike with the fixed weapon against one creature you are undetected by.
Yep. It's pretty strong. Like 1 action for 2 actions.
When
Can
you
be
are
very
undetected
handy.
by a creature, and a master in stealth.
Yep.
Orchestral brooch. I say this is the one that's on this page. A silver brooch that reverberates slightly with sound of music anytime anyone touches it. Transform it into a chosen instrument, and then your performance can be accompanied by a grand procession of music and that complements your own work. So it helps your performances.
Yes. It's very important if you want a critical success on your performance check to... I think it's to perform? Is that right? It's any performance check. So that's going to be very powerful when you use it on a performance check to do some wild and outlandish thing. Phoenix Flask is a good one. For 1 minute, you gain a fly speed of 40 feet, and the first time each round you fly, you shed burning feathers that deal fire damage in an emanation. So that's pretty cool because of you can deal fire damage while flying around. Whereas Potion of Grounding can ground you out against electricity, giving you the Divert Lightning reaction where you kind of like make the lightning come to you like a lightning rod. Can be very handy. And thing is, you are automatically hit or automatically fail your save, but that's potentially fine if you know that you were the person in the party with the best electricity resistance, for example.
Which I mean, if you're drinking a potion of grounding, like you probably had the foresight to also prepare to not be messed up by electricity.
Yep.
Or are the person who could most handle taking some damage.
That's
and
right.
You want to protect the squishier folks in your party.
Yep. And it lasts for a minute, but you can only divert lightning for every 1d4 rounds in the minute, so it'll do it a few times, but it's a reaction, so it can be kind of fun. And here we get to our first like little story about a bundle of arrows. They each are like little notes that are taken about just different weird items that were found by the wizard at the beginning of this section.
A potion of minute echoes. Let's see. Gives you a status bonus on perception checks to hear, and when you seek, your hearing becomes a precise scent until the beginning of your next turn, so you can pinpoint specific locations. That seems really useful.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with invisible creatures.
Yep. So
I don't care that you're invisible.
You can seek, and even if you fail the check to seek, you still actually made your hearing a precise sense, so you probably found which square they were in anyway, unless they were taking precautions against precise hearing.
Yes, which, like, how many people are going around being like, I'm going to take precautions against precise hearing?
I mean, you might want to muffle your sounds and take precautions against hearing in general, because everybody has it as an imprecise sense. It's probably one of the main senses that people are taking precautions against, like, compared to, like
vibration, tremor sense, or whatever, yeah.
Or, like, rainbow sense.
Rainbow sense.
You sense how rainbowish something is. It's
yes.
like, but I am wearing all gray because someone might have rainbow sense.
Yes.
So potion...
Rainbow sense, otherwise known as detect gnomes.
Yep. So Potion of Stable Form is a potion that can try to get you back into your normal form. You might note that it has the magical herb moly, which was used in the Odyssey to end the effect of Circe's transformation of people into beasts.
Oh, cool. So that's where that comes from.
Yes. And that's the Potion of Stable Form.
Potion of Shared Life. You and another creature drink each drink half of the potion, and your vitalities become linked. So you can do a reaction. Oh, I see. So this is kind of like a shielding thing, where you can take some of the damage for your ally.
Yep.
But instead of being like a class ability or whatever, it's a consumable item that anyone can use.
That's right. Then there's Resonating Ammo. It is an ammo that has a tuning fork that deals sonic damage when you hit with the resonating ammo. It's pretty cool. Retrieval Prism is nice. You put it onto an item, and then you can use its ability to, as a free action, retrieve that item. Also, the Greater Retrieval Prism is very powerful because it can retrieve any item in your possession of 1 bulk or less as a free action. Who doesn't want to be able
So
to
you can have a set like a stack of scrolls, and you can be like, I'm going to use the Greater Retrieval Prism to retrieve whatever scroll I want right now.
Or potions. You can
Yeah,
you can really break the action economy if you can get any potions you want enough times. Obviously, if you're not like a talisman archetype person, you can only have one talisman on, so you can only do it once. But still, potions are usually one action for abilities that are often better than a one action ability. And so it can be very handy to retrieve your potion. Scrolls are very versatile, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But they don't usually action economy cheat in the way that potions do.
Fair enough. I was thinking about it from the perspective of like having the bag of scrolls to do all the spells that you didn't otherwise have prepared.
You
and
might
then
as
call
well
up
have
whatever
those too. That way you can pull out whatever you need when you have the greater one.
Or like if you had a scroll of something that was 3 actions, and you wouldn't be able to get to use it in that round if you had to.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you had to draw it, or etc.
So the short spread spy is hilarious. It's
basically a cookie
it's
spy.
like
What
it's
does
like
it
the
do?
gingerbread man. It's a cookie spy that comes to life and just scrambles around and.
But you better make sure you decorate your cookie spy with eyes, or it won't be able to see.
That's correct.
Aww.
I mean, it's very important. It's kind of oblivious and can't be given directions. It follows a path of its own choosing. It's like the gingerbread man. Can't catch me. Then there's a storm feather. So storm feathers are a talisman affixed to armor that can cast fly on you for only 1 minute, and then you can dismiss it to get a feather fall. So they're pretty handy because of the fact that it is a one action fly that you can just be like, yeah, I need to fly now for a minute.
You don't need to. You don't need to radiate fire, but you do need to make sure you land safely.
Yeah,
when you're
of
done.
course.
Yeah. Let's see. What is this? Topology protoplasm.
Yes.
So you apply it to a creature or object and shift it into an ooze-like state so you can squash and stretch it.
That's true. It makes
I see. So it's for like squeezing and fitting through like narrow pathways.
That's right. Then there's Vapor Sphere. It's one of the most powerful ones that's in here. It's a talisman that whenever you trigger a trap's reaction or an enemy that was undetected by Mayu makes an attack against you, you suddenly turn into vapor and gain resistance 25 to physical damage and immunity to precision damage against the effect.
Oh, and then you can move 5 feet after the reaction or attack, so it's like not only did I mess up your attack, but I'm also 5 feet away, so you have to step up to me again. If you
I told you it was one of the most powerful things here. You might not have thought that was true when I said it was called Vapor Sphere, which is not like the most dangerous sounding name. It's very strong.
It's very defensive.
Then there's a really cool section that's one of the best parts of this consumable section, which has some lore and ideas about material with magic, and talks about like some of the different materials that are used across various cultures.
Oh, I see. So like how do they make consumables, and also I see there's a pleasantly consumable section too for like what about magic that isn't necessarily going to take the form of, oh hi, I am nondescript liquid in glass bottle.
Insert liquid here.
Yes. Magical fruit, and other sorts of magical foods and things like that.
Yep. So,
and how you might possibly help defray the costs of crafting with other items that you find in your journeys.
Absolutely.
Very
so those are the consumables, but let's move onward to permanent items.
I said how, and you can dismiss Featherfall too. Well, if you dismiss Featherfall, then you're probably going to go splat, so I wouldn't recommend that.
I probably don't think you should dismiss Featherfall, but that's up to you and your
I mean, I guess I can't tell PCs what to do. Like, there's always the whole thing about how PCs will always do what the GM doesn't expect, and that would certainly qualify.
So let's move on to permanent items,
yes.
Whereas consumable items are often like underestimated because they're consumable. Permanent items are not as often underestimated, and so therefore they are the ones that people get more excited about than consumables. But I sometimes get excited about consumables, but I will admit I'm bad at using them too.
Yes.
I'm like, this is so good. I can't believe how good this is. Oh, I'm gonna hoard it forever.
Well, you hoard it forever, and then eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, these items are no longer used for our level, so we'll sell these off. Oh, actually, this is pretty powerful. Let's buy another 20 of them, etc.
Yep. I mean, talismans tend to be useful at any level. So at some point, you're just like, this costs so little. Let's just have someone put it on their armor and then see if they need it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So let's move to the Anointed Water Skin. So the deal with the Anointed Water Skin is that it slowly refills itself and then does a Holy Cascade, which is like this giant holy water spell blast. And you can also drink it to get a bless effect. You can activate it.
Oh, I see. And you can also activate it to create
10 vials of holy water when it's full. Yep.
Yes.
That's right. So it's kind of cool, and in each dawn it becomes full enough again to use. So it's got 3 different choices that you can do. Then there's Archivist Gaze.
Oh, it's a new Apex item.
Oh yes, there's a set of new Apex items in here. They're all slightly more powerful than the old Apex items, although there are reasons you might want to use the old Apex item instead of the new one.
So are they higher level than the old Apex items?
They are. They're 1 level higher. Mm-hmm. So the Archivist Gaze is especially good at occultism, so it's not as focused on being all types of recall knowledge, but it also means that you're constantly investigating at all times, which is a very powerful ability to get like information about stuff and still be doing your other thing.
I see, and it also has an activation lets you cast either True Seeing or 3rd level Comprehend languages.
Yes, that's correct. But the entity tied to the spectacles chooses which one.
Yes, but so the GM picks which one is most immediately useful, including picking which language is most useful as well.
That's correct.
So you don't have to guess.
Then there's Auspicious Scepter. So as you might expect...
What makes this auspicious?
Well, I mean, it's only 1 level higher than a normal +1 striking mace. It's actually really not that much more expensive, so you should really look into it if you want to have something that's more auspicious, because when you recall knowledge about a creature after you hit it with the Auspicious Scepter, you learn 1 of its resistances in addition to any other information, and a free action once every 10 minutes when you cast a divination spell. The next attack by a creature who is targeted by the triggering divination spell bypasses an amount of resistance equal to the spell's level. If the triggering spell targeted an enemy, it instead applies to the next attack against that enemy. So, for example, if you cast True Target on the enemy, which is 7th level spell, then the next attack against them penetrates 7 resistance. Obviously, that's a very high level spell to be using a 5th level item, but yeah, that's the main idea of it, and it's lost if nobody actually attacks that enemy until then. So it's got some pretty good bang for it for not that much of an increase over your normal +1 striking mace, but that's because you always get a wholesale discount on those special items since they can't hold property runes.
Backfire Mantle sounds more like the name of a cursed item.
Well, except for that it's a mantle to protect you from backfire, Linda.
Oh, I see. It's a mantle to protect you from backfire. Does it set your back on fire?
No, it's not. It's something that Froggery should have gotten so that Eustace would stop blowing her up.
Oh, yeah. For those cautious warriors who need to advance into the fray ahead of the blast-happy back line.
It protects you from your allies' magic. See, Froggery should have gotten it.
I totally would have bought this with my fire.
To reflex saves against your own spells as well as those of your allies. You needed it. Your wizard kept fireballing you constantly.
Yeah, well, the wizard's like, oh yeah, gonna give you some fire resistance so it doesn't hurt so much when I fireball you.
You definitely occasionally got hit by splash damage from your allied alchemist.
Yes,
not as much as the fireball.
No, because the wizard was always like, I'm gonna fireball the whole room that has the fighter who went into the front line.
By the end of the game, it would cost you nothing to spend 430 gold to get +2 against your allied things.
Chance that she would have bought
Resistance 10 against the alchemist would have completely blocked all of his splash damage.
Yes, and then the wizard be like, well, I don't have to give you fire resistance from another way. I'm just gonna
because he did feel bad and cast fire resistance on you. Actually, he still should cast fire resistance, because just because you have a +2 and are more likely to make the save doesn't mean that you don't deserve the resistance.
Well, it says that Mantle gives resistance 10. So.
Against splash damage from
against the splash. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. But +2 is the saves against your wizard, and 10 resistance to splash against your alchemist.
Yes.
Your fighter would have loved this item.
For sure.
All right, so
were you thinking of her when you looked at this item in this book?
I was. So Bane is lower level than some other property runes that add damage. It adds the same amount of damage, but only to a certain type of creature, which does not include undead, because you can get a positive rune for that. It does not include any kind of humanoid, because this is not the racism rune. It is the Bane rune. And so it does 1d6 damage to those types of creatures.
Oh, I see. And it doesn't apply against creatures of the chosen type disguised as other creatures. So, and it's up to the GM whether it would apply to a creature disguised as a creature of the chosen type. So it's more about, like, your beliefs, and it can't be used
that's why it's
to,
divination.
Like, I see. So it can't be used to, like, be like, I'm going to test for shapeshifters, but...
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Blade of 4 Energies is a cool one. It's +2 greater striking, shifting, short sword. But once per round, you can draw magnetic energy from the gems, and you roll randomly, and it gains one. It's a free action. It gains one of these other property runes. So the cool thing about it is it has a property rune shifting. It's gonna gain another property rune. So it actually, until you get to the very end of the game, it gives you back the property runes that would have had. And once per day, you can make it explode, and it depends on which element you currently have randomly gotten. Now, in exchange, it's random.
Yes.
However, there's also a greater version that has the greater version of those other property runes and a bigger explosion.
And a bigger explosion, higher level spell.
There's also the Brilliant rune. So, it deals 1d4 fire damage on a successful hit, as well as 1d4 good damage, but only to fiends, and 1d4 positive damage only to undead. Which also means that it deals over twice as much damage as a normal property rune if you're fating a fiendish undead.
Yes.
Which is possible. I know that the Demon Lord Zora has some vampire demons, and there's also some vampires in Hell. The two dueling vampire dukes in Hell.
It's probably going to be one or the other.
You probably won't get both.
But I see, on a critical hit, it can blind the target.
It can. And you can activate it for one action to plunge your weapon into darkness to return the light. How about that? It'll try to counteract
the darkness.
Yes, and Greater Brilliant is better at counteracting things.
And it also ignores the target's fire, good, or positive resistance.
Which is handy since you're hitting it for 3 different things, and so if it has a bunch of resistances, or like it might easily resist all of them, and then you'll be like, it was a fiend / undead, but it had resist all. Because the type of undead it was an incorporeal fiend undead.
Yes, naturally.
Although they generally don't resist positive, but you know. Alright.
Burr shield. Covered in numerous seed pods with long spurs. You can... I see. So you strike with them as if they were +1 striking shield spikes, and you can cause the burr to catch on the target to do persistent
the little
damage.
burrs kind of catch off of the shield.
It's a very druidy shield.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Then there's Buzzsaw Axe. This is another one of those where it's like, this is not that much more than a normal +2 striking axe to buy.
Is this like a chainsaw axe?
So it's not exactly a chainsaw axe.
Okay.
Because then it would have the chainsaw property rune from Lost Omens character guide. But it definitely does make whirling motions and try to whirl free of your grip, and so it's pretty close to being a chainsaw axe. And basically, if you get the sweep trait on it for attacking multiple things, it also gains more damage. And furthermore, once per day, you can hurl it and cause it to actually just turn into a giant buzzsaw of axe that flies out and then returns back to you, leaving a trail of carnage.
Very cool.
I mean, who wouldn't want to do that with their axe? Then there's the cantrip deck, which I think there's an entire Pathfinder Infinite product that is based on this cantrip deck. All the decks were by Simone Di Sale, who's one of the freelancers who was a contract editor for Paizo. And it's just a deck made by Nephesians that has the cantrips in it.
Oh, cool. So it'll be like, okay, Julie, it's time to learn about cantrips today.
Yep.
You have like the flashcards or whatever. I see it. You can envision it to cause the cantrip to rise to the top of the deck and cause the deck to cast the cantrip.
That's right. Then there is Chatterer of Follies. heavy +1 striking Kakara. Now this one costs twice as much as a regular +1 striking Kakara.
So it's probably got a lot of stuff going on.
Let's see what you get for it. You probably get some really good stuff here. So it's got all these graining idols and tiny tendrils of flame.
And things like that, yeah.
Whenever you complete a move action during your turn, choose a creature adjacent to you at the end of your movement. Until the end of your turn, they take a -1 status penalty to will saves against your enchantment spells and your illusion spells. Anytime you cast your enchantment or illusion spells, you become concealed during your move actions for the rest of your turn. So it gives you synergy with either move and then enchant, or enchant and then move.
Ah, very nice, very nice.
I mean, I could see someone even at extremely high levels hanging on to this so that they can give people a -1 status. There's no way to avoid it.
Yeah. And if you're focused on
penalty.
casting spells, then like you're just holding this in one of your hands. You're not necessarily
I mean,
gonna be like, I'm
sure,
gonna attack.
can you demoralize or Bomo someone?
Yeah.
You could. But that might not work. This will always work.
And there's more statements on this page too about I see some things about experiments and court record and a statement wedged in court records of Gult. That's pretty cool.
Yep. So there's the Cloak of Feline Rest.
Oh, wait a moment. I somehow wound up at the end of the book. Apologies.
Whoa!
I'm my way back. I must
Oh my gosh.
Go to the end.
You're at the end of the entire book.
Woo.
Let's go to the Cloak of Feline Rest.
Yes.
Do you
Here
see
we are.
it?
Yes,
All right.
I have recovered my place.
You can rest like a cat.
You can take a cat nap?
You can comfortably rest in any space that's not wet or hazardous, and you take a smaller penalty on auditory perception checks while sleeping. So you can just kind of curl up like a cat in any area. Then there's Codebreaker's Parchment, which is a basically when you write words on it, they scramble up, and it takes Decipher writing to find them out, and then you can make them turn into the original written script. And
oh, I see. You can also activate it to light the parchment on fire, leaving the parchment unharmed but burning the words off if you want to make sure that nobody can find what you had written on there.
And to write something else.
Yeah.
And it's most of the time when you identify magic, you get all the commands on a success, but you need a critical success to get the commands on from this item, which means that it is harder to identify magic and get the command to force it to unscramble than it is to just decipher the writing.
Yes.
Which is kind of key. It would be weird if it was like, well, the easiest thing is just
identify magic, not to try to break the code. Yeah.
Yes, and then there's greater versions that require much higher proficiencies to beat the codes because the code just gets more and more
there's
ridiculous.
even a level 17 version where it's like, are you legendary
in society?
In society,
if not,
you can't decipher this code. Period.
I think it's society. It actually doesn't say.
I think it is, but I think society is the decipher writing.
Well, you can use any skill when appropriate for deciphering writing, but probably society for a basic code, whereas like you use like religion to decipher like a homily that has been written by a very confusing priest.
Fair enough.
All right.
What's
so
next
the color of the eternal bond lets your Eidolon get further away from you before they unmanifest. And not only that, but you could activate it once per day to let them go wherever you want without unmanifesting. Then there's Conflagration Club. Now that one actually costs even more than the Kakara, so it is more than twice as much as a regular +1 striking weapon, but it's got some stuff. Because as a reaction, when you cast a spell from a spell slot with Acid, Cold, Electricity, Fire, or Sonic, you can charge up the club. And it just kind of reverberates with the energy that you've put into it. And then, when the club has at least one charge, you can flip it around and blast out a cone that deals damage based on the spell. So, it's pretty interesting. And, basically, you store charges equal to the spell's level. So, you wind up with... Let's say you cast an 8th level spell, then you wind up being able to do 8d6, which is about a 4th level Burning Hands.
So this is definitely a weapon that feels like it's a lot less about the fact that it happens to be a great club, and a lot more about the fact that you're using it for cool magical powers.
You might just even hold on to it and be like, yeah, every time I cast an 8th level spell, I can do a 4th level Burning Hands afterwards. And it's not always burning. It's whatever the element is, which is relevant because it's probably a good element for attacking the thing that you're fighting.
Yes. But the name Conflagration Club, like, implies fire, but it can do any of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Acid, cold, electricity, fire, or sonic.
Yes.
Then we have another deck. Let's see.
Deck of Illusions.
Deck of Illusions.
It's a classic item.
Oh, yeah. So create an illusory creature.
Yes, and there's a big list of illusory creatures here.
And how you can figure out which one it is based on a tarot deck or a playing card deck.
And we have the Old Mage deck, which is a something that the Lost Omens team and I, like mostly Luis and I, but everybody was working together, came up with it just in case we wanted to put it in, I think, Grand Bazaar, but then it didn't fit, and now it fits here because these are cards. There's a lot of cards in here, so it's a full reskin for your normal playing card deck that has the 4 essences of magic, matter, spirit, mind, and life are the 4 suits of cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have 13 numbered cards with characters depicted on them, plus 2 wild cards. And so you've got 13 cards in the suit are as follows, with the Jatembe's 10 magic warriors as cards 2 through 11.
And the initiate being 1.
Yes, the initiate is 1. Then you get red hyena, gray elephant, golden snake, black ibex, frog of shifting colors, emerald spider, walnut hawk, white bull, blue leopard, black heron. And then you have a different creature for each suit that represents the given suit's magical essence best.
And then the 13th one is,
Jatembe using magic of that suit's essence, and wild cards vary from deck to deck, which makes every Old Mage deck unique for each other. So that shows you what you can do. Like life is hearts, of course, and matter is diamonds, because diamonds are like a thing that you might want.
Yeah.
So this will allows you to use your playing card deck and pretend that you are playing with an Old Mage deck.
That's pretty cool.
Yep. Then there's Deck of Mischief. It's an uncommon cheating deck that
So it looks like a normal deck, but you can activate it to illusorily transform the ace and face cards into other cards in the deck.
Yes.
The deck is true to its name is less likely to comply with your wishes if not well cared for.
You've got to take care of your deck, otherwise it's going to come after you. And basically, yeah, you activate to learn which of the ace and face cards are still in the deck, and then swap for that. So you never.
Oh, I see. If
you never swap for one that's in the hand of your opponent, because
Yes.
that would be really obvious.
Also, I see. If you let the cards become missing or damaged, then the deck is gonna sabotage you.
Oh yes, it totally will. So Ember Heart is another
really
of the new
level.
apexes. It's a heart-shaped amulet. It actually has one of the little writings is about Ember Heart, I think. It's a Constitution one, so it gives you poison resistance 15 when wearing the amulet, and you can activate it to release an orange light in an emanation that gives 30 hit points back to all of your allies and gives them a +3 status bonus to fortitude saves until the end of their next turn. So if you're facing opponents who force a lot of fortitude saves, that's a huge fortitude save benefit and a pretty decent number of hit points back. It's not like the most hit points ever, but it's still like that's about as much as a 7th level heal spell, 3-action heal, and it's a 2-action ability, and it gives the status bonus. Plus it's all allies only, and it won't accidentally heal your enemies. So now Extending Rune, another one of the runes that I randomly wrote later on during the process of this book.
It gives you ridiculously impossible reach.
You spend 2 actions to extend your weapon to be 60 feet long and attack something. Or 120 feet long with the 13th level version. It's time to extend our reach to the stars above.
Indeed. Let's see, then we have the Flask of Fellowship. I see, the drink. It'll pour out whatever drink the person you're drinking with would most enjoy, and help you with your diplomacy check.
That's right. It might not help if drinks are inappropriate or the target is absolutely not interested in sharing a drink with you. Then there's Glasses of Sociability that can help you too with diplomacy. They help you avoid awkward confrontations, and you can activate them.
My goodness, this would be useful. Activate to look at another creature and instantly remember their name if they've told it to you before.
It never penetrates any disguises. It'll give you the wrong name if someone is disguised as the person you met before.
Yeah, but like, just being able to be like, yes, my glasses say that you told me your name before, and I remember it.
Yes.
Very useful.
That's so useful. Those glasses are much better than me at doing that. Then there's Gloaming Shard. So that's a cool one. It's a +2 striking returning dagger. But its deal is that for 2 actions, once per hour, you make a thrown strike with it at a target within 60 feet, and whether you hit or miss, it doesn't return to you. You return to the dagger. So you still get it back, but not by it coming back to your head, but by you going to where you did that.
That does seem like you could use it for a lot of things, though. It's
Yes.
a short range, like, I'm going to attack this enemy, and then I'm going to appear next to them and continue with my
keep
attack.
my attacking. I'll now hit them with my rapier or something, because I'm doing a rapier dagger build. It's very nice. Then there's Guiding Star. Yes. So this one
sounds super Desmond.
is the most expensive +1 striking weapon so far. Now, to be fair, it comes with returning built in.
Mm-hmm.
Which also means that it is strictly superior to any weapon that you can own until level 10. Assuming that you wanted to own a +1 striking returning star knife as your base weapon, because it has all of the property runes it can have and then more things.
Mm-hmm.
So at level 10, then it's not, but for 3 whole levels, it's just better than anything else that you can have. Now, you did pay more for it. When you cast an evocation spell, your next attack this turn reduces the target's cover, changing greater cover to standard or standard to lesser. And then you can activate it as a reaction once per 10 minutes when you hit someone with it, and cause them be soft light to kind of outline them. And then the blades detach and form into darts of starlight, which fire up to 40 feet and strike the target unerringly, dealing piercing damage and good damage.
Okay, so it is Desna themed.
It's very Desna.
Yeah.
It's very Desna.
Hat of Many Minds, patchwork hat, made from a variety of materials. It always looks like it's just a little bit off on your head, no matter how you adjust it. You can tear off a patch of the cloth to manifest into a copy of yourself, dressed in the color and fabric of the patch, that you can get to do some straightforward stuff for you.
Yep. It lasts for 30 minutes, but it takes it about 3 times as long to complete the task it's doing, which means it can do like 1 10-minute task for you in those 30 minutes. It's too slow to really use during an encounter, but it can help you when you're in exploration mode to do something that takes 10 minutes and just kind of just do it, and you can leave it behind. And you get a +2 item bonus on earning income too, because of the many minds in that hat.
Speaking of things that seem like they're connected to deities, 100 Moth Caress sure sounds...
This is now the record for the most expensive +1 striking weapon.
It literally has benefits if you're a devotee of Urgathoa.
Sure does.
That makes
if
sense.
you're not, then you just spent a lot of extra money for nothing. Oh no, that's not true. You can still use the activation.
Yeah, it's just...
Yes.
You can use it as a divine focus.
It's a divine focus, but it's a free action once per round, that you deal 1d10 negative damage to yourself. Who wouldn't want to deal 1d10 negative damage to themselves?
If you're an undead, then
it doesn't do anything. If your next action is to strike with a scythe or cast a spell with a disease or negative trait, that strike or spell deals additional negative damage equal to the damage you took after any reductions or increase for immunity, resistances, or weaknesses. Yep. So, essentially, if you have a good way to get hit points back, even if you're never going to attack with this thing again, if you're like a cleric of Urgathoa, you can just stand around and do 1d10 extra negative damage on all of your spells. I mean, once per round. So if you do the triple harm thing, then not all of your spells. Assuming that all of your spells are going to be a 2-action spell once per round, then mostly all of your spells. It's particularly handy, too, if you are, like, let's say you're a sorcerer. What was the one? I think Undead Sorcerer of Urgathoa. There are a few sorcerer types whose blood magic is, like...
When you do negative damage,
when you do a thing, it heals, I think, or something like that. So, because you need to take the damage.
Yes.
That's an important thing. If you don't, then you don't get to deal the damage. But if you can heal the damage back, then you're going to be set. So let's see what it is. You can gain temporary hit points equal to the spell's level. So eventually, that's going to be enough that you take the damage to your temporary hit points.
Yeah.
And then you're fine. And the opponent still takes a d10 extra damage. So don't sleep on doing a d10 extra damage with all of your spells, as long as you... And Kitsune Warlock figured out a combo where you give yourself weakness to negative so that you do even more damage. And that is what it says. So if you can give yourself weakness to negative, you can do even more damage. All right.
Yeah, because it says after any reductions
Yes.
or increases from
That's
immunity
correct.
resistances or weaknesses. Yeah.
So if you give yourself weakness and negative damage, then you can be the most powerful ever.
Yes.
Because you're opening yourself up to Urgathoa.
Yes.
Impactful weapons do a d6 force damage, and on a crit, they might push things away from you. That's basically what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Invisible chain shirt. It is literally invisible. It has the invisibility property rune. True.
Oh, I see. And
But
it's
it is
not
actually
noisy
invisible.
anymore.
Yep.
So this is what a lot of characters must be wearing. Who
It has the comfort trait too.
Yeah. So what a lot of characters must be wearing when you see them, and they're like supposedly an armored character, but you
Yes.
see like their stomach or their pecs
It's
or
an
whatever.
art fixer.
Yes.
And so you can sleep in it, and it's got the invisibility property, which is a good property rune.
More seriously though, like getting to wear armor into places where you're not, where it would be really sus to wear armor.
And as a 2-action activity once per minute. So very often, you stride and turn partially invisible, becoming concealed until the end of your next turn or until you use a hostile action, whichever comes first. As normal, you can use the concealment from this activation to hide. Because it's not like making you into a blurry version of yourself or like putting their images up there that people can see. It's actually making you partially invisible. So you could literally use this and then hide. And they'll know where you are if you did that as your turn. But nobody can see you. Even right out in the open. Or you could attack someone and then use this to retreat a little bit and be concealed.
Jar of Shifting Sands looks like it just produces an infinite amount of sand.
But who
1
wouldn't-
gallon per
who
round.
wouldn't want an infinite amount of
So
sand?
you could pour out a lot of it to 1 minute's worth of sand to create difficult terrain.
Yeah, I mean,
I like the
It's
little
legit.
flavor note in here that that it is said, however improbably, that the jar is responsible for creating at least one desert in the world.
yep.
How long would that have had to be up to
I mean,
create
if
a
you
desert?
have a jar of shifting sands and if you have a decanter of endless water, you can make a beach.
You could! You totally could!
Speaking of things you can make,
Hashtag immortality goals.
how about key making tools? So these are thieves' tools, and once you successfully pick a lock, then it's going to create a temporary copy of the key for the pick lock, which works just fine. So it appears attached to the thieves' tools, and you can just use it one way or the other to get through there quickly, while also having the lock seem to be in place and fine. So people come through and are like, "Oh, it's fine. The lock is here." But
So
you
you
know
you
that
pick
you
the
can
lock, then you reset the, then you
Yes.
reset the lock, and then you
because
just
the
do it normal.
problem is if you don't have this
Mhm.
and you pick the lock and you reset it so that nobody knows you broke in, if you have to come out in a hurry,
Yeah.
you have to pick it again and you might not succeed.
Mhm.
But this time you will because you'll have these items. Mask of Allure is another one of those super powerful Apex items. It's going to give you +2 on Deception, Diplomacy, Intimidation, and Performance checks while wearing the Mask of Allure. Put up your Charisma, and once per day as a free action when you attempt a Deception, Diplomacy, Intimidation, or Performance check, you gain a +4 status bonus to the triggering check.
+4?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes. As long as you're not under a disguise, and it has like the mask transforms a little bit at the time. But like, imagine, I mean, like, if you use this, you're gonna demoralize things like so easily with a +4 status bonus, or you'll make a good impression, like, because that combines with the +2 item bonus.
Yeah.
It's very strong.
I can see where
And
the
I think
mask
there's
gets
a
its name,
story
yeah.
about someone using the mask that comes after that. Mercurial Mantle is another one of those. It gives +3 item bonus to acrobatics and stealth, and +2 circumstance bonus to AC against attacks from reactions triggered by your movement.
As you might imagine, this is a dexterity Apex item.
It's great for if your GM loves to throw tons of monsters at you that have some kind of attack of opportunity type thing, and a lot of the higher level monsters are more likely to have some trick like that. So you can be the high level Dex monk, say, who has super high AC, and you can just run around and let the monsters miss you with their attacks, so
And
that
then
your
when they miss
spellcasters
you can, and then when they miss you, you can activate a special reaction to
once
slip
per
around
hour.
them,
Yep.
to step without moving away from the enemy, and then
possibly
make
make
a
them
strike against them.
flat-footed.
Yeah.
Yep, and your casters are safe because
Mm-hmm.
you drew out the attacks. Plus, once per day, you can activate an ability to make the cloak hum with power as you whirl it around before disappearing in a brief flash of light that teleports up to double your speed to a location you can see and then make us an attack. So, it's a very good item. So, the North Wind's Nightverse is a +1 striking frost katana. So, the frost part of it is actually a pretty expensive part of the item, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
that much more expensive than you might think than the base item, even though it's +1 striking, because frost is actually independently pretty expensive.
Oh, I see. But it does more damage against creatures with a status penalty to speed and who are slowed, which are the kinds of things that cold-related stuff tends to do.
Yes, and in fact, as a free action, you can command it once per minute when your spell does cold damage to a creature to choose a creature dealt cold damage and make them gain a status penalty to their speeds.
That seems synergistic.
Yes. Ouroboros Flail is a flail that has the extending rune on it. It's +2 greater striking. It's extending, so it become ridiculously long. And it's got a reaction that you can use once per hour when you strike someone while it's extended to make the head of the flail wrap around the target, and you do a get over here. And then there's a 3 action where you extend out the chain, then wrap it around itself, and create a 60-foot loop of chain.
Oh,
for
I
the
see.
flail.
That's why it's called Ouroboros.
Yep. Because you could just make out the 60-foot loop that you pull out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Greater Ouroboros Flail that's more powerful, and the Major Ouroboros Flail that is yet more powerful and has greater, both have greater extending as well.
Oh, and here's the Major Ouroboros Flail is a 20th level item.
Yes.
And there's another 20th level item
It's
here.
even more powerful than Major Ouroboros Flail.
The Rebounding Breastplate.
Yes.
+3 greater resilient, greater fortification breastplate.
It absorbs impacts for later release, so it's like Black Panther's armor.
So, also grants you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, and force damage.
And the resistance to force damage is even more.
Keep track of how much how much armor the damage prevents, and then once it's absorbed at least 30 damage, you can release it in an explosion of force.
Yes. I mean, it's kind of like Black Panther's armor.
It is.
There's a lot of other armors that are like that too, but that's one that I thought of.
And the one depicted on this page here looks like it's the Restful Tent.
Yes, it's a very restful tent. It's comfortable in there.
A comfortable tent that doesn't have insects and is climate controlled.
Mundane pests such as solitary ordinary insects avoid it, though swarms and giant insects can attack it as normal.
And it camouflages itself automatically with the environment.
Plus, only you can easily move it. So Sage's Lash is another one of those awesome Apex items. So Sage's Lash has an ability that it gives you +3 on religion, because it's a more religious wisdom item than the previous one. It's give you wisdom, and then for 2 actions with no frequency listed there, although, I see, because each one is once per day, and they have a special thing where each jewel is separate. So you can use each of its 4 jewels once per day that you can see in the picture. So the Jade, you speak Purity, and it is going to end Sickened. And
ongoing poison damage. Turquoise, speak Clarity to grant all affected a +2 status bonus on their next will save.
It's a 30-foot emanation for all of these.
The Quartz has you healing creatures.
For 30.
And the Amethyst emanates a light of truth that makes invisible creatures... That makes everything one step more visible than it previously was.
That's right. So Shadow Signet is an extremely powerful ring, and it lets you cast a spell as a meta magic for a free action with a spell attack roll against armor class, but use Fortitude DC or Reflex DC instead. So while you obviously can't apply Flat-Footed to this, because Flat-Footed does not penalize Fortitude DC or Reflex DC, on average... if you know which one of a creature's saves is the weakest, and it is Fortitude or Reflex, it's going to be more than 2 weaker than its AC, and so therefore it's better even if the opponent has flat-footed by a small amount than just going against their flat-footed AC. Plus, you can't always hit their flat-footed AC when you're using a spell attack roll.
For sure.
It's not like you can flank with when you're attacking at a distance with your spells. So that is the Shadow Signet. It's very, very good. Definitely should consider it for a character who is good at knowledges and can figure out enemies' weaknesses, or can just guess that the big rampaging Triceratops is worse at its reflex save than its fortitude save.
Yep.
Or AC.
Sometimes there's definitely context going on there.
Singing short bow.
Is this like a bardic short bow? You sing,
is.
hum, or whistle a note, and your bow provides appropriate accompaniment. And it's determined based on the notes that you sung, so it can create a song of soothing that heals creatures and helps them against mental effects, or a song of suffering that deals sonic
Once
damage.
per hour, you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a greater singing short bow that is more soothing and more suffering of a short bow.
Speaking of sound and sonic, there's a sonic tuning mace.
It's basically a tuning fork. That's why it has twin tips.
Yeah, that makes sense. That you can use to cast sonic, and that you can use to cast sound burst as well.
Yes, and it's thundering. And the greater sonic tuning mace can cast
an even higher
an even
level.
more powerful sound burst.
Yes.
So remember Northwind? Now there's Southwind, Scorch Song. And unlike Northwind, which was the one that did cold damage and you could do more damage if they had a speed penalty, this one is going to be flaming, and
it helps you when you
are faster. Then you're going to do more fire damage.
And you can activate it to make yourself faster in the same way that the cold one, you could activate it to make your opponent slower.
That's correct.
Let's see. A specialist ring devoted to a single school of magic that helps you recognize
the focused trait, which is a trait that you can have one item with the focused trait that always has that activate to give you back a focus point.
Oh yeah, so it gives you back focus points. It helps you with Arcana checks.
Specialist wizards didn't used to have those. There were cleric vestments and druid vestments in the core, but not a specialist ring. And now there is.
Staff of the Desert Winds. Helps you survive, subsist, track, and helps you with a lot of survival things. Subsist, track, and cover tracks in the desert, and gives you a bunch of spells that would be useful
deserty.
Such as Know Direction, Create Water, and Endure Elements. Definitely things you want in the desert.
There's a staff storing shield that is a magically reinforced wooden shield that can absorb a staff and transform between a shield and a staff. So that way, you can use the staff when you need the staff's magic, and you can have a shield when you don't need the staff's magic. The true staff storing shield actually has pretty legit hardness, HP, and break threshold, especially for a wooden shield. Now, obviously, if you don't care about staves at all, you can get, I think, even more than that hardness, HP, and break threshold on the purely defensive wooden shield that's in Lost Omens Grand Bazaar. But this is a very solid choice for if you want to have a pretty good amount of hardness, HP, and break threshold on your wooden shield. And also have a staff you can pull out at any time.
Let's see. Stampede Medallion is an item for Eidolons, which you can invest that helps your Eidolon with shoving and tripping, which makes sense because of Stampede.
Yes.
And they can also, they can also concentrate to create a stampede of dozens of copies of themselves that rampages out everywhere.
That's right. And then they disappear after dealing their damage. So the Thousand Blade Thesis.
Is this like a Magus item?
What? The Thousand Blade Thesis?
It really seems like a...
It can be. It's a collection of rice paper scrolls with calligraphic essays of the art of war. Gives you warfare lore bonuses. And it serves as an extra-dimensional armory for weapons and ammunition. It can hold 5 bulk of weapons and ammunition. And as a one-action interact action once per day, it unfurls and all of the 5 bulk of weapons spring forth in array and floating in the air around you in reach. And so for 1 minute, you could use a free action to draw out of this array of items.
Oh, and for like your opponents or other people to grab them, it's as hard as disarming a weapon that you're actually literally holding.
Yes.
So they're protected.
That's right.
It's your armory, not theirs.
It is your armory and not theirs.
Titans.
So it's very effective if you have some kind of situation that you're doing where you want to pull a bunch of different weapons.
And then Titan's Grasp is our apex strength.
Yes.
Helps you with all athletics checks, and particularly with athletics checks to grapple. And if you grapple big enemies, then it deals bludgeoning damage to them as well.
That's right.
And you can activate it when you have 2 hands free to clap your hands together for a thunderous crack that deals a bunch of sonic damage.
It's one action. That's pretty important to know that it's a one action ability, because a lot of activations that do a big AoE are not.
And it looks like right after
that's
that,
it. We end on T. So we made it. We made it through. We got to all of the items there at this point. And
so next time we will continue with the Book of Unlimited Magic. But
so
for now,
let's say bye to
let's
YouTube
bye
and
to
then do our
YouTube.
outro. Bye, YouTube.
Bye.